Good everyone, not the start to April I was hoping for. I hesitated, got locked into the wrong stock, missed some massive moves and then made a bad trade out of frustration. ICCT was a leading gapper, but I ignored a good entry and then ended up stopping out right before it pushed higher. On top of that, I hesitated on GRI at the VWAP, then watched it fly to $9.50 without me. So it was a frustrating day. Let's break it down. So the first stock today I looked at was ICCT. This had, what time was that? That was around 6:25. Actually, I'll bring up the chart there. So it's around this area here. It was just sort of going sideways into consolidation. And this was where I missed the first break. So I was looking at CSAI as well during this time, and that was also going sideways. But this was the first entry that I should have taken on ICCT. It had come up and it was hitting this resistance point here at its previous pivot. And so the previous pivot was along here, and it was in consolidation along here. So it hit there and it pulled back, and it had a nice pullback down here to about 274, 270, and that was a good entry for a pushback to test that pivot level. And it did, it broke straight away. So an aggressive entry would have been here off the low, and then the next entry was sort of in here as it broke up and then pushed higher. So I missed that trade. It went up to a high of around 340 up here. So yeah, that would have been a nice trade, getting in around 280 or up here around 290 and getting 50 cents. Roughly 50 cents a share would have been a good trade to take early in the night, or early in the morning. Night for me, but morning for the market. So yeah, but I missed that, and then it pulled back, and it had sort of closed off. MACD had sort of closed off around here, around this area here. So I wasn't going to trade any of this really. Yeah, so that was ICCT pre-market. I didn't really look at it again. It basically went sideways through that range in pre-market. I looked at it again at the open when it pushed up here to $5. Didn't take any trades on it here. I was looking at a couple of other stocks as well. But I ended up trading it here. I think it was in this candle here around just after 10 o'clock. And what happened here was I was setting it up for the pullback, for the dip back down to, not down to VWAP, but down to about 380, 390. And I wanted to buy on the way back up when it confirmed that it was going to come back up. But if we have a look at my chart actually, I did film my session last night, but I can't find the file. I think I must have deleted it. So I've just got the screenshot today. But yeah, I bought in on that dip there, but I'd placed the order at around 405, and it was actually trading up here around 428, something like that. And I put the order in to test if I could actually buy the stock, because sometimes my platform or Trade Zero, they put a stock on a margin list, and I can't buy my full share size, well 200 shares sometimes in a stock. I can only buy 100 shares. So sometimes I'll test the stock to make sure I can buy at that level before actually planning my trade, or before actually wanting to get into my trade. Well, I tested it at 405, but the stock actually flushed down and filled me as I was testing that level. So I was in too high for the pullback, and it did pull all the way back down to around 385, 383, and then as it came back up, I didn't know if it was going to hold, so I stopped out, and I was down $16. So that was my one trade of the day. It was a bit of a mistake. I probably could have bought back in here as it came back up at 396, or the break of this candle here. If we go back to this chart here. So this is where I sold out here, stopped out here around just under $4, I think it was. And as it came back up here, this was another entry here for the pushback up, pushback higher. I think that was, yeah. So that was around 10, 11. Is that the right one? Yeah, that was the right place. So yeah, buying in around, re-entering about this price here would have been a good entry. And I was looking at getting back in around $4.05, $4, but if I just held for this pullback and then the break through this first green candle here, then I might have been in for that pushback to 450. But I got stopped out, and I'm still on one trade a day, and even if it's a mistake trade, that's my trade, unfortunately. And so today was a red day, down $16, which is not great. And also buying here was a bit out of frustration, I think, because really I finish around 10 o'clock is sort of the end of my session. And this was about 10 minutes after that I took this trade. So I was a bit frustrated because I had watched this stock most of the pre-market, looking for it to break, and it didn't really give me much of an opportunity. So when I was first watching it here, it was around this area here. Maybe a bit bigger. Yeah, so when I first saw it, it was sort of coming down here, and then on really light volume, it pushed up over here, and I didn't take it because the spreads were a bit wider, and just not a lot of volume came into this as it pushed through. So I didn't take this trade up through this area here, and then it pulled back. I was kind of looking for more volume to come in on the stock, and then really break up to, you know, through to 745, somewhere in that, where it was in the pre-market highs, the after hours highs from yesterday. It didn't do that in pre-market at all. The volume stayed pretty light. It wasn't until the open that the volume came in, and first candle blasted straight up into a halt. And then when it came out of the halt, it it basically did a round trip all the way back down again. Yeah, right back to where it came from, even further. I can't remember if it halted down or not, actually. Yeah, what's that? So it's halted up, came out of the halt at 9:36. Yeah, and I think it halted down here at 6:04, and then came out of the halt and sort of pushed lower. And then it rallied again, and yeah, but by this stage I kind of had disregarded this stock because of this up and down candle here. Just didn't look strong, and then I thought it was going to fade, but it actually rallied. But by this time I was looking at ICCT, so I'd swapped over to ICCT. So really today was frustrating because I was focused on CSAI in pre-market when it had no volume whatsoever, and you know, ICCT was the stock that had people trading it, it had volume, it was moving the right direction, and I pretty much ignored that stock during pre-market. The other stock that I got a bit of FOMO on, well, actually quite a bit of FOMO on, was GRI. So this stock here popped up. I didn't see the initial break on my scanner. I saw it as it had made the second push up to about $6 and then pulled back. And I was watching it as it failed down here and pulled back, and I was thinking, oh, it's done, it's gone. So it couldn't hold just under the VWAP there, and it broke down to about $4. So I'd sort of moved away from it in this area here. I can't remember what stock I went to. I was probably flicking between ICCT and CSAI. But I noticed that it was rallying and it was coming back up. I think I saw it coming up here in this candle here. It was pushing out. And I looked at taking a position around here as it broke VWAP, around 496. I think my order was for 496, 494. And I didn't push the buy button. I was unsure. It was sort of, is it going to go? Is it not going to go? And instead of just getting in and especially on the confirmation here when it broke $5, that's when I should have been in. Even if I was in at 5.15, 5.20, you know, it still had a fair way to go to the next pivot, which is around $5.92. And then, you know, the high of the day at the time was around 6.74. So, you know, if I had pushed the buy button around this area, that would have been fine, looking for it to push up, break this one here, and then possibly break this one here. Well, it did that in one candle. It blasted up in one candle, you know, over $2 a share. And then on the third candle, it pushed up over $8, which was $3 a share if I was in around $5, $4.90. So that gave me a lot of FOMO missing out on that trade. You know, that would have been a really good trade to be in. And yeah, I just left without me. And then when it got up over this area here, I felt like I was chasing it. I felt like it was too high to get in, even though it squeezed further up to $9.50 by the end of the pre-market session. And then going into open, it squeezed even higher up to a high of $11. I think it went into a halt. Yeah, it did go into a halt at 9:31 on this green candle. On this green candle here, it went into a halt. Came out of the halt, pushed a bit higher, and then dumped into a halt, and then halted 3 times down to a low of $6, basically. Pretty much returned back to where it came from, and that was pretty much over for GRI. But yeah, had a lot of FOMO on that, and just was out of sync with the market today. I felt I kept watching the wrong stocks at the wrong time. I wasn't there for the break. I wasn't being patient. And then when I got into a trade, you know, it was already after my session had finished really. And I think it was just more out of frustration to take a trade on the day. And when I set up for it, I just got caught out, basically, a bit unlucky. Yeah, so first day of April is locked in the books, and it's not the day that I wanted to start with. But then again, it's only $16 down, so it's not a massive loss to recover from. This one stings. I wasn't in sync today and it cost me. But the goal is always to take the lessons and move forward. Tomorrow is a new day and the plan stays the same. Right stock, right setup, right execution. I do have to be careful not to turn the tables though, you know, to be too aggressive and take risky setups, which might lead to another red day. You know, what's worse for you? Taking a bad trade or completely missing the best setup? Let me know in the comments, and if you're enjoying these daily recaps, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow. Hei a popo.